This is part one of a few parts of an overview of the readings that you've had. We're looking at the overview of positive youth development, some of the intentional processes and the principles of positive youth development, looking at the developmental assets model, and then Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory model to help connect the dots from your readings. Again, I wanted to give you a few additional resources on top of the readings that you have. I'm enjoying the discussion posts. Look out for during midterm time. I will be connecting you with other classmates to have basically a shared midterm experience where you'll get to discuss some questions together. That way it's a chance for you to meet your classmates. In an asynchronous class, I get the discussion posts aren't always the most effective way, but it's important to be able to collaborate and share. I think it's important that we all buy into the discussion posts, but the midterm is a chance for you to, you'll have some individual work, but more importantly, you'll have a chance to collaborate with some of your classmates, and I will share those. That way you'll have plenty of time to connect and establish a time to meet outside of your work schedules. But again, this is an overview of youth development. I hope you enjoy this lecture. As we go out the semester, I will try to put some modules in place through your SkyPack reading, and then I will add additional resources from literature, experiences, things that I think are important to add on to your readings. So there will be recorded lectures and bite-sized pieces, about 20-minute lectures that you can take the notes, and then I'll share the PDFs as well of those slides. So hopefully this is helpful for you. If you have any questions, be sure to contact me. Thank you for bearing with me with some of the grading. I'm in a bit of a transition from one department to the other. I've been working very hard on working on our undergraduate minor, so I've developed about 5 syllabi in the last 2 weeks. I teach additional courses that my TAs unfortunately are not able to access any of my stuff. So as a head lecturer and professor, usually you have TAs that assist throughout the process. So it's been a whirlwind of a month. Again, shifting departments, but nonetheless, thank you for your patience. But these lectures, I hope, are helpful for you all. I want to assist you as much as I can in your profession to provide as much context as possible. So enjoy this lecture. This will be the first part, and the next one will be discussing the history of youth development, and then finally the final lecture for covering these first few modules is the educational theory applications in youth development. Again, these tie to your readings, and hope you enjoy. I wanted to briefly overview youth development and adolescence. We'll talk about adolescence just from the definition standpoint, and then we'll talk about the history of adolescence. And I think it's important to look at it from a historical point of view and where adolescence has emerged from in regards to our society. But from a scientific aspect, we have the set of changes, right? We all remember this time, the transition from childhood to adulthood. There's some biological, physical, psychological, emotional, all these changes that are occurring to us during this emotional time frame, which is it's important as youth practitioners to understand where the youth are whenever we're working with them. During this time, young people develop values, attitudes, different knowledge and skills, certain behaviors that can impact a program that you're leading or you're participating with. So I think it's important to understand that our role is to be pro-social, is to be intentional in our process when working with young people, because eventually we want them to evolve into contributing citizens. And you can see that number 4, the major developmental, sorry about that, early in the morning, developmental task is becoming fully functioning adults. Those 5 C's in positive development that you'll see later on in some readings. That last C is contribution. We want them to contribute to society. They don't have to be in a grand scheme, go viral. I tell a lot of my undergrads that you don't have to be the biggest name in all the world. It's just doing what you can do best in your community, and that really can make a difference. So let's get into a little bit of the breakdown of adolescence. Looking at early adolescence, generally speaking, okay, this is again from a general standpoint, where young people, adolescence begins, and adolescence is that emotional, social maturity, and puberty is, the gonatal maturation. Okay, so there's that little bit of a difference there, but they can almost oftentimes interchangeably. But just to separate those two, puberty is the sexual, psychological, and then adolescence, behavioral, social changes. But women, girls usually hit puberty before men, generally speaking. Again, it can be different for specific cases, but generally, girls will begin the process of puberty before boys. And early adolescence is 12 to 14 years of age. Middle adolescence, 14 to 17. And this is the time for experimentation, autonomy, development. And late adolescence, 17 to 29 years old. And this goes into continuing their identity development. Developmental task of adolescence, we break it down by literature. There's identity, moral compass, achievement, autonomy, and then these close relationships of intimacy and becomes comfortable with one's sexuality. I'm going to read you a quick quote that may surprise you where this quote came from. Now, I want you to think about where this quote originated from. And when we look at the historical context of youth development. So just think about, did it come potentially from could it potentially come from an essay, Twitter, Facebook, or magazine, newspaper? Okay, here's the quote. Do not laugh at youth for his affections. He is only trying on one face after another to find a face of his own. Do not laugh at youth for his affections. He is only trying on one face after another to find a face of his own. To get us on the same page, looking at some of your discussion posts, I think most of us got this, but positive youth development is a process that prepares young people for the challenges of adolescence and adulthood. So that if you think about some of your adolescent development, were there activities put in place? Did you have certain experiences, that maturity principle that got you to a certain point where you realize, oh, I learned from this, and did these experiences and programs and these services that were opportunities and some of the support that you were given, did they provide emotional support, physical support? Was there opportunities for cognitive development? Did the task meet where you were at that time in regards to cognitive development? I think that's an important aspect. So here's the PYD in a sentence: intentional pro-social approach. We want programs that engage youth with their communities. We want programs that recognize their strengths and not only recognize, but utilize and enhance that young person's strengths. We want to promote positive outcomes in our programs. It's not rolling the ball out and letting kids have fun and, well, I just love kids, so let's just hang out and play. It's a very intentional process in regards to positive youth development. So the role of programs, hopefully you are going to be involved with, programs that I'm involved with. We want to reduce the presence of emotional, behavioral, and social problems. So we're trying to create a safe environment. We want to prevent such problems from occurring and promote positive, healthy behaviors among young people. So these programs are planned with positive outcomes. They're a very systematic approach, an intentional approach. And these are some of the roles of youth programs. Now, there is something called SOPs, supports, opportunities, programs, and services. We can foster this intentional process, a pro-social approach through supporting young people. As you can see here on the slides, that's relationships, mentors, coaches. I'm sure if you can reflect back at this moment and think, this coach or this teacher or this mentor really made a difference in my life. And then you think about the opportunities that potentially maybe those coaches, teachers, mentors gave you. And then there are certain programs put in place and then services. The 10 principles of PYD, these are grounding principles of this body of literature, assets in the making. So looking at young people as an asset rather than they're just problems. We've got to fix these young adolescents. And we'll talk about historically why some of them have, or why some youth professionals have this mindset of young people are problems. There's a bit of a historical context that we need to understand. Additionally, there's an asset-based model. So you can find this on the Search Institute. They developed this developmental asset model, and models are great ways to take theory and to provide a model for practitioners to go, okay, let me look at the internal assets, the external assets, and let's place them in this young person's life. Let's see how we can provide more external assets, and let's see how we can bring out some of those assets in them. So that's the asset-based model. Vision of fully functioning adult. So the youth development must have a vision of transitioning young people from adolescence into adulthood. It seems like a no-brainer, but there was a time just not too long ago where it was childhood to adulthood. We didn't really respect that adolescent development. So that's an important aspect of getting them from childhood, developing them through the adolescence, and then again getting to them to that functioning adult aspect. Embracing the and, moving beyond, well, either they could do this or they could do this. It's they can do this and this. We can see this young person doing this and accomplishing this. It's not this is what they can do or they can do this. Knowledge, skills, and behavior. Developing the full range of knowledge, skills, and behaviors is necessary for youth to successfully transition to adulthood. Going back to the pro-social intentional process, your intentionality behind developing knowledge, skills, and behavior are implemented into that program. And those are things that we'll discuss as you go throughout the program. But just again, this is to outline the 10 principles of PYD. Involving adults and the family and community. There's Bronfenbrenner is the bioecological model, theory model, and out of that model is it's very youth-centered, and then the systems that impact the young person, and then therefore the young person can impact the systems, meaning their immediate environment. Where's their immediate environment? Generally, it's the home life, and then from there you go to the schools and to programs, and then to the then culturally, how does that impact a young person? But to bridge the gap between the immediate environment to their schools, and then from their schools to the out-of-school time programs, it's very important to have a bridge in between those. A great example is the Harlem Children's Zone. There's a gentleman named Dr. Canada. If someone's interested, I can send them the 60 minutes they did over this video or over this school. But it is a school in Harlem where they have completely bought into involving the adults in the community into the young person's education, and that's been really beneficial. It's a complete buy-in. Youth involvement and support. So again, coming to the aspect of intentionality, we have to design and evaluate our programs. Are they supporting? Are there programs in place? Are there services? Are we giving everyone an appropriate amount of opportunities? That's pretty critical in their development. This reminds me of on the 16th of November, I will send out the formal announcement to the class. If you're in town, if you would like to drive into town, but we have a guest speaker, Dr. Mary Arnold, who's going to talk about youth thriving. She's a pivotal researcher in this field of positive development, and she has a lot of emphasis on youth involvement and support. So that'll be a really neat thing, and hopefully we can record the lecture. If we record it, we'll obviously get that resource to you all. Intentional programming, I've said this a few times already, but the comprehensive planning and design of programs are critical. It's going beyond, I have a heart for kids, I just want to work and help kids. It's having that knowledge as a practitioner on, okay, my kids are at this age, these are some age appropriate activities. And not meaning, oh, this is inappropriate, this is too adulty. It's programs that will challenge them, but to be able to meet where they are. And that's a critical piece of understanding where youth are coming from and meeting them where they are, and not expecting them to be at some other level where they're it's cognitively it's not available for them. It's like you're speaking a different language. I'm not saying we need to set it's inappropriate to set high expectations. What I'm saying is it would not be appropriate to establish a program where A, the challenge is too difficult and you haven't scaffolded a way to meet that challenge, or B, you're not giving them enough of a challenge and your expectation of the young person is too low or too high. So you've got to create, you have to be intentional in your programs moving forward. Programs to scale, this is again at the scale of saturation. Are we doing enough mentors or enough group leaders per kids? B, is this at an appropriate level where the young people that are participating in it, it's not too many? Maybe you go to some boys and girls clubs. I've been to a few where there's 100 kids and there's just not enough programming for all the kids that are there. So do you need to scale back how many people are participating? Do you need to get more staff? That's regards to. And then sustainability is Overtime turnover is a big barrier for youth programs, but sustainability, evaluating your program, are you doing the right things? And evaluation is something that we'll cover throughout this program. But is it something that you're doing? And evaluation doesn't mean your program's bad. Evaluation doesn't mean your program's great. It's just a chance for you to evaluate to see if you're meeting your specific outcomes. And we'll talk about logic models and things moving forward. So this is this example of the developmental assets. The Search Institute is a great place to find resources, but this model is for practitioners, researchers. I discussed this in my undergraduate courses and graduate courses. But when you look at these developmental assets, this is the external, so the things outside of the young person support. And yes, you can imagine that the more assets a young person has, the more likely they're to fully thrive into adulthood. And fully thrive is reducing those risky behaviors, introducing the positive development process of developing emotionally, physically, having social behaviors. All these are developing appropriately. And the more assets a young person has, the more likely they're, again, to fully thrive. So family support, positive family communication, other adult relationships, caring neighborhood, even to empowerment. It's a community that values young people. So when they go out, or people, hey, it's good to see you, or oh, there's those teenagers again. Safety is a critical piece. Boundaries and expectations through family, school, neighborhood, adult role models, constructive use of time. So are they participating in creative activities, religious community, time at home? These type of things are very, very important in regards to a young person being able to thrive. So those are the external. As you can imagine, the next are the internal. And I would love for you to reflect on your own time. Let's look at these and go, okay, how many of these can I relate to when I'm as a young person? We're, ideally, some of us, if we're in that range of 18-29, we're in our late adolescence. These things still matter for our development, but especially when you're in that middle adolescence, early adolescence. Think about when you look at these external assets, how many of these were present in your development, and think about how those played a role in your development. Internal, positive identity, personal power, self-esteem, sense of purpose, positive view of personal future. The program that I operate, so you can see it right behind me, I've been there for 8 summers. I work with 10 to 13-year-olds, and that positive identity, number 4, positive view of personal future. We have questions like that for the 12 and 13-year-olds. What do you see yourself doing? And quite often we would get the response of, I don't know. I haven't thought of myself. It's just day to day at the house. And that could be for numerous reasons why they haven't thought beyond, um, 5th grade. And it's not that they have to exactly know what they're doing, but for them to think about, oh, I can do these things. Oh, I can see myself being a doctor. I can see myself being a carpenter. All these types of things that are important. Social competencies, so planning, decision-making, interpersonal competence, cultural competence, resistance skills. And these are some of the skills that we can implement into our programs. I know for myself, we want our young people to leave with a caring aspect towards others and to themselves. We want them to have some discipline, self-discipline. We want them to be able to engage and bond with other people. These are skills that we implement into our program. And so this is, again, a nice model to lay out how are we implementing this into the program that we're functioning. This is the Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory of development. So as a systems model, if you look at this, the micro system, you being the young person, the youth, the micro system right here is the family, school, peers, religious affiliation, workplace, and neighborhood. Mesosystem is this blend in between the two of, you got the family, school, peers. This is the mesosystem, is the blend between all these. And then the exosystem, the economic system, political system, education system. A fun nugget, I'm a big podcaster, and recently just listened to an episode from Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History, and just something I have never thought about, but you think about being an older senior and a younger senior. I graduated as a very young senior, but think about if I'm the young senior, you're the old senior, and we took a standardized test at the same time. Well, you would have a year of development over me, which is a bit of an advantage. And then you can even take that back to lower grades, middle school, elementary, how that education system can potentially be an advantage for someone being older. Hence why a lot of families are holding kids back for athletic reasons. If I'm an older senior, I have another year of maturity. Whether if I was a late bloomer in puberty, or if I was early, regardless, I had another year of development. Which during that time of early adolescence to middle adolescence, that's a huge advantage in a lot of the ways things are set up in our systems. But to this point, something to think about when you're working with young people. Your program might be great, but look where your program is. It's a little separated from that youth because there's a few other things that are blended in between. And what I find interesting is, and I've read this, oh man, what is this book? I don't have it near me. If I think of the name, I'll share it with you, friends. But it's at the end of one of the chapters says you cannot change a child by just working with the child. You have to change if you want to help develop and really help change that child and their development. You have to change their environment, and the environment is a critical piece in youth development. And this is where this systems model comes into place in regards to how important the environments are where young people are developing. But hope you enjoyed this lecture. Again, the next lecture is going to be focusing on the history, and then the final lecture is the educational theory applications in youth development.